Okay, so thank you very much for all of you that have joined us today. And also thank you very much for those of you who are re-watching this. Essentially what we are going to go through today, my name is Jacob Rupp. This is my wife, Julie, and we are the founders of the 8 to 8 program, which is basically a system. Let's call it a system. It's a methodology that enables you to take the skills that you already have and to build a business in we're like very goal oriented in our programs to build a business in 2 months that should allow you to do $8,000 plus per month in reoccurring revenue. So that's the concept of what 8 to 8 is. Julie, maybe if I could be so bold as to ask you to share a little bit of our background and how we got to building this program, that would be amazing.
Okay, so just in a very quick minute, the reason that we started doing this program and created it was because we were in the nonprofit industry for over a decade, and we did a lot of meaningful work. We worked within the community, we helped people, and we were constantly working on people's mindsets, goals, visioning, all of that. We just have a new participant. So we were working with people and for people for most of our career. And even though that was really, meaningful to us, what we found was that we really weren't able to make ends meet. We weren't making enough money. We didn't have enough freedom over our time. And we wanted to find a system where we could take our skills, our expertise, and our experience and plug it into something where we didn't necessarily need more education or more certifications or complicated like online systems or anything like that, but we could take our skills right away in a turnkey style and use it to make money right away. So that is kind of how we came to this industry, is that we always were used to working with people. We actually were in a great network because we knew tons of people from, just basically, being a nonprofit for so long. And now we could plug in our experience and expertise and kind of take out the middleman and actually really charge what our worth was, which at that point was over 10 years of experience. And so that was basically it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to walk through basically the power of leveraging a system, because if you could leverage a system, that's ultimately where you can get the most bang for your buck when it comes to building your business. So I'll just give like 3 practical examples. I'm going to leave names out as ironically for this crowd, you could probably figure out some of the people that we're talking about, as it's a small world. But we had one person that came to us who was a therapist, and it's interesting because at this juncture, we've worked with many therapists, because a lot of therapists are in that classic area of well certified, has a long history of delivering success for people, knows what they're doing, loves what they're doing, and is chronically underpaid. And even if they are paid well, they're working for quite a lot of hours to make that money, which is very endemic in just about everybody in the industry. So even though we've worked with people that have, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 per year practices, they're running themselves absolutely ragged. So we started working with this person who literally had this mindset that I can't charge more than $150 an hour, because, that's sort of like the top end of the market. Maybe it's $200 an hour, but that's kind of it. And they were about to do this very terrible thing called hire an online consultant or spend a bunch of money on marketing, and would have very likely wound up with having been $20,000 out of their pocket without actually creating a product that is of high enough value that it makes sense to justify that kind of spend. So what we did instead was we started helping this person dial in specifically to the niche that they were working on. And this piece is absolutely fundamental, to move out of the charging per hour, instead of charging per outcome. That's like the first big takeaway, that if you really want to make money in this field, you have to start charging per outcome and make it time bound. So instead of saying we're going to work hour to hour, it's like in 2 months, we're going to take you to desired outcome X. And what this person was able to do, it's crazy. Literally, their slow months are $40,000. And still have no marketing team, still are, and that's also the crazy thing for any of us that is in business, is that there's really no overhead. At a certain point, maybe you hire like a personal assistant, but there's no overhead. And so it's very simple. So if you're able to create a system where you're charging for the outcome, it's time bound, but it's not hour based, that's going to be a major shift. That's what this client's major transition. Another person, which is super interesting, is very often you might be already being compensated for things that you do, but you're not fully squeezing out all the juice or all the meat, getting all the meat off the bone. So there's a lot of people. One of the people we worked with was a very prolific speaker and was able to get speaking again. This person's sort of an anomaly because they have a very large social platform and they're a well-recognized speaker. Again, you don't need to have a social platform to be successful in business. For us, like, I don't, people are still like laughing at me, like, what kind of a website do you have? And I'm like, dude, we're making $100,000 a month. And like, we don't have a website. Like, we're building a website now, but like, you don't need any of that stuff to actually become, to make the money. That being said, if you already have a background, if you already have that platform, it is very helpful. So again, if you think about, this person was going around doing speaking gigs and they're leaving a tremendous amount of money on the table. Why? Because we know, speaking requires travel, unless you're, a master of the Zoom, right? So speaking will require travel. And also, again, you might get $5, $10, $15, $20,000 per gig, but practically speaking, how many gigs do you get and how often are you able to actually get those gigs and how much time goes into building the gigs? Again, obviously, if you have the name brand that you're one of the top speakers, maybe in the Jewish world, you would be able to have, gigs back to back. But I don't know, unless you want to be traveling all over the place, all over the time, could be it's not the best use of your time. Also, you're traveling on, you're speaking maybe weekends doing Shabbatons. Question would be like, what about the rest of the week? So what we did with this person was we basically took one of the topics that they talk about, right, for one of the audiences they speak to. We actually built it into a program. And as a result of that, they're doing $300,000 of new revenue. Again, zero spend, no ad spend, no back end things. It's just pure profit, right? Just taking this same topic they're already doing without any other like development, but changing the delivery methodology so that people are able to pay in and also to pay for proximity and experience to the speaker. So again, if you have a public platform and people already know you, that's going to be an extremely effective way to to make your business even more lucrative. Right. Okay. And then also, as they started charging more and more to get access to them, then their speaking fees also went up because, again, a $5,000, $10,000 speech is really cool unless you just did that this week with like 2 clients. Now they're asking you to fly across the country, whatever it might be. Right. So now their speaking gigs are anywhere from 15 to 20,000, which is double what they were doing when they started working with us. Okay. That's another sample of just sort of how, you're able to sort of take what you already have and leverage it. The third option, the third sample of a person, I actually spoke with him today. So this person's in the education field. Again, we're talking to people that are very competent at what they do, right? And so, but the problem was he was unclear who he was working with, and he was actually kind of well known for 3 separate things. And the problem was because he couldn't ultimately dial into what he wanted to do. So he had 2 books on one subject, another book on a third subject, and a social media platform in another subject. So one of the things that we see very often with very competent people is it's kind of unclear exactly what they do, or what they do and how they can leverage who they are is not super clear, right? And that's actually now a fourth client I'll reference very quickly, right? Which is that most of us are not clear how to authentically leverage who we are into the brand that we build in such a way that people are thrilled and excited to pay. Right. So what we did with this one client, he's just about to break his first $30,000 month this month. It was crazy. Like, he just told me, he's like, yeah, I just closed $7,500 worth of business. Again, for this guy, like when we met a year ago, he joined our program Passover for whatever. We're all Jewish here, right? He joined our program. He was making $6,000 a month working 2 jobs. And now he just closed it's Monday, right? As of this recording, he just closed this week, meaning in the last day, he closed $7,500 worth of new business, right? Just the beginning of this month. So what was the secret? How was he able to do that? Was he got uber clear on exactly what he did, learned how to clearly articulate it, and then bring that to market so that he was able to get people who are excited to work with him. Again, because when you're messaging all over the place and it's not totally clear what you do, and it's not totally clear how you can help people, so then as a result of that, it's hard for people to give you money and give you a lot of money. So that's that case. One other case very quickly, then I'll go into like the 4 steps of how to do it, is that we had a client that came to work with us. She's an executive coach already. She's already in the coaching field, right? And we had a conversation, and the thing that kept coming up was that she was having trouble hiring. She had 2 problems. Problem number 1 was she had trouble getting referrals. And problem number 2 was that she had problems like charging lots of money, even though her content was great. So what did we do? So number 1 was we really broke down who she was working with. And what it came out was she was mostly working with management, right? And she was like, no one refers people. And I was like, that's interesting, because I have tons of referrals, right? And I was trying to figure out what the difference is. What I realized was, because I focus primarily my work with CEOs and executives, right? And not management. So these people I found overwhelmingly are very growth oriented and actually like to share resources of things that have helped. So whereas I'll help clients and then they'll say, hey, I worked with Rupp and it was fantastic, right? Meet my friends. And they opened up their Rolodex. For her, she found that within the management component of these large companies, and she worked with, Google and Facebook and Coinbase and all of these big companies, right? Overwhelmingly, she was finding that the managers were not sharing it because they didn't want to look like they needed to get help. Right. And so by changing who she was working with and the culture of the types of clients she was working with, in addition, she's a professional athlete. She was a professional athlete, and of world renown. And I was looking at her messaging and that showed up 0. Right. And I'm like, wait a minute, like somewhere on the about page on like section 3 of your website, like you talk about the fact that you literally were like the best in the world at this particular sport. Like, what the heck? And she's like, yeah, well, I'm not coaching for that. I'm like, you don't understand, right? If you look, most of the biggest breakout successes in the business coaching space, and again, you don't have to coach in business, but if it's just something to know, right? Is this concept, this is kind of the first point that I'll teach in terms of building your offering, is that you cannot be a prophet in your own land. Meaning you want to think to yourself, how am I exceptional? And how can I leverage my my nature of exceptionality into my audience? So I said, look, if you think about it, who are the biggest names in business coaching now? So you think of a guy like Jocko Willink, right? Did he build 15 huge companies? Well, now he did, but ultimately, no, he was just the head of the Navy SEALs and then went into business consulting. But again, you can get any consultant, but if you get the head of the team 3 of the US Navy SEALs to come coach your guys, like that's awesome, right? Flip side, what's his name? His name is Kobe Bryant's coach is Julie Wayan. What's his name? What's that?
Tim Grover.
Tim Grover, right? Same thing, right? So Tim Grover, one of the most sought after business in the business coaching space, right? What the heck did this guy do? Nothing in business. Oh, by the way, he was Michael Jordan's coach and Kobe Bryant's coach. So again, what people are looking for is your exceptionality, how you can bring that in and make yourself completely unique in such a way. It doesn't matter if you've never built a business, because if you build Kobe Bryant, trust me, you can talk to my sales team. Right. So what we also helped her do was to refine her messaging and lead with what she's truly exceptional at. And that created, again, I think as of yesterday, she was reporting that she was more than doubled her fees and she was able to build tons and tons of people that are excited to meet with her. So just those little tweaks. So the point is here that there's an industry out there that's going to sell you on certifications and you're not ready yet. And all of these stupid systems, and none of it actually works, makes sense, or is relevant, because at the end of the day, if you know how to do these 4 steps, you will be able to build a very lucrative business. Again, what's lucrative? I know it varies depending on where you live and what you're doing currently, but again, to easily make anywhere from $8,000 to, I would say, $20,000 per month in reoccurring one-on-one coaching fees, which again, should be anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a week of work. That's what we would call very, very doable. After that, so we would maybe discuss scaling strategies. I'm going to stop now, ask if anyone has any questions based on what I've said so far. Cool. Okay, here we go. Here are the four pillars of what you need. Number one is to, going back to what we mentioned, you have to be very, very good at clarifying who you are and what your core assets are. Meaning, and again, we walk through with our clients, literally, you have to learn essentially how to tell a story of your life so that you can figure out what are the core things that I am world-class at and how can I leverage that into something that people would pay highly for. Now, that's a very, very difficult task in the sense that most of us try to think, what do other people need and how can I mesh my stuff into that? It's the opposite. What am I? How am I unique? And then how can I bring that to a market that needs me? Now, the second piece would be, and we're going to figure that part out. I'm speak more about that. That's piece two. But how do you flush out your entire story? So again, it's going to have to be what we would call the asset list, which is not only your accomplishments, but a lot of your setbacks, right? My coach, who is, again, if we're talking scale, he's now doing $500,000 per month, right? So and again, the really cool thing about this is it's just character studies, right? So he was able to, he played for, again, he was a football player, professional. He played for a year and a half, right? He played for the Raiders for a year and a half, but he's been able to leverage that story and go on to build a highly successful business, right? Why? Because he took all of the pieces that went into becoming a professional athlete, and then he figured out how, again, then he determined who he wanted to work with, right? And in his case, he wanted to help men who are like 35 plus, who are running large companies, get six-pack abs. Now, again, you're going to be like, what? That's so specific. It's like, yeah, it is. And there's a tremendous amount of wealth that's built in the specificity of clarifying who you're world-class at helping, right? So he, again, but then if you watch his messaging, he's talking about his story over and over and over again, and then showing how those techniques are what you need in order for you to create the accelerant, the greatness in your own life, right? And then he's very clear about what you get and what it's going to mean to you to get that. And again, that piece is where most people who are profitable speakers, profitable lecturers, people that are teachers, therapists, in a lot of ways, they always fall flat on that because they're so busy talking about their methodology and their system, and they lose out clarifying where they're taking their clients. What are the specific KPIs, the specific key performance indicators of what it looks like to get there? And then what's that going to be worth to the client? Hopefully that's clear. So piece number one is you have to create your own asset list. Piece number two is you have to identify your client. Now, again, there is a tremendous liability around this because most people think if I clarify who I work with, then I'm going to be sending away dollars, right? And so we try to cast the biggest net possible. Overwhelmingly, we find ourselves in the muck that most life coaches find themselves in. And literally, this just happened to me a couple of days ago. I asked someone because whatever, I'm consistently hustling. So I saw someone that went on a podcast and I knew that they were coaching, and I reached out and I'm like, so I'd love to learn about your coaching business. Who do you work with? And they're answering back, I work with men and women, religious and not religious, Jewish and not Jewish. And I'm like, you're not making any money, right? Because there's no such thing as a generic, again, like if you think about it, like, generic medicine nowadays, like no one's making any money doing that, right? You go to CVS and go in the, like whatever, right? The people that make money are specific. Now, the good news is you don't have to go to med school for 20 years to be specific. But if you find someone, again, look at John Madsen, clearing $500,000 a month. He is highly targeted. You have to be a business. You have to run a business. You have to be executive, right? You have to want to get to a six-pack, right? Which again, not simple, right? Especially again, depending on who you are, right? But it's not a simple thing. You have to have a 9% or less body fat to really have a visual six-pack, right? And you have to understand, again, he's talking to guys who are married with money, who have kids and businesses. Like, why would those guys want a six-pack? So he's able to leverage why that's valuable is if you actually are able to have pride in your body and control over how you eat, right? It's going to create more structure, more confidence, more clarity, so that you will become, his language, superhuman, right? You will become able to overcome. So that's an example of someone who's able to build a highly lucrative business versus the kind of jack of all trades. And you think to yourself, oh my gosh, John Madsen's turning off 90% of the clients. Yes. And he's paying all of his bills with the 10% or less that he actually is dialed in. And I've seen that exact same thing with our own business. As I get more and more clear who I'm not for, right? Then then you're able to create great clarity. So again, if you'd want to work with us in our business, it's not cheap and it's highly intensive. So there are all kinds of people that go out there going to sell you a year-long certification course. I only care about the ROI of your investment, meaning if you want to make $8,000 per month and you want to and you want to be doing that in only 2 months, and you only want to be doing it a few hours a week, right? So that's who we're trying to talk to. And it's for people, and that's the concept. So that's not everybody, that's most not people. But if you're able to dial in, that's how you're able to create maximum value. Okay, that's piece number one. And piece number two, figure out your own assets. Number two is figure out who you're for. Number three would be to figure out your continuum. What problem, like on what continuum do you have people solve their problems? So again, that when we think about, again, if we have lots of information, but you want to ask yourself, where would this information be the most helpful, right? So again, let's say you want to help people raise money. So the question would be, well, which people do you want to help them raise money, and at what stage of their business? Are they scaling to sell? Are you trying to raise startup capital? Are you a mom that's trying to, just learn how to budget properly? So the way that you figure that out, again, the questions that you'd be asking yourself are, number one, where would this advice have been most helpful for me? So as Julie mentioned, our background is in the nonprofit space. So back then, if I could just make another $5,000 to $10,000 per month, I would stop worrying about money at that stage in life. It was a good stage, right? But the idea would be how can I make my first extra 5 to 10 grand as a coach, right? Because I knew at that stage of my life, I didn't want to start working in insurance or anything like that. I didn't necessarily going to get on the speaking circuit. I just want to make money now. And so this program was what I needed. And that's why I built it the way that I did, right? So very often you want to think to yourself, where would this be the most effective? These few skill sets that I have to deliver, that I'm going to deliver in a very deliberate and narrow way. How can this be the most effective? That's piece number three. And then piece number four is the idea of pricing based on the value that you are delivering, not on the outcome or the time. From the bottom of my heart, this is usually the hardest thing for most people to deal with, mostly because we have our own limiting mindset beliefs around what our time is worth, whether or not we can actually get this for people, whether or not we're overcharging people, all of those things. It's all going to come up there. That being said, a lucrative practice comes when you charge people based on what the outcome would be worth to them. So for example, again, you just have to think about this, right? What is Rolls-Royce selling? They're not selling cars. They're selling confidence. They're selling prestige, right? So that's why they're charging $400,000 for a car, right? Because again, you can get the same car, right? You get a bigger car, maybe you can get a set of wheels for, I don't know. Our neighbor just got an $8,000 Escalade, bigger than your local Rolls-Royce, right? It's doing the same thing, but it's not selling prestige in the same way. And so you have to think to yourself, what is this asset going to be worth for my ideal prospect, right? And you have to charge according to that. The reason why that's crucial is again, basics. It's the basics of math. Number one is if you have enough money.
Tomorrow, yes. Hoy no.
Oh, 1 second. I'm just going to block that. 1 second. How do we mute? Julie, can you help mute? Oh, there we go. Thank you. So the first thing to do would be to realize, what is this outcome worth for my client? Now, number one is it's a lot easier for you to hit your income goals if you're charging enough money per client. Number two, it's a lot easier for you to give the client what the client needs if you are if you're getting compensated enough, right? So if you're getting X amount of money per client, you can bring all kinds of other resources to the table. You can find other people that can help you. You can, again, you can create a deeply immersive experience. One of the reasons why our course is a premium level course is because we have a ton of resources, right? And so by charging enough money that we can actually get our clients the support that they have, that's kind of the breakout that we're able to do. So that's the second reason why I should charge based on what the outcome is worth, not the per hour kind of a situation. Third, and most importantly, at the end of the day, Coaching is 10% and finding the right motivated client is 90%. So at the end of the day, you need clients who are going to be highly motivated to actually solve the problem. So they need to invest highly in it in order for them to take it seriously and take it responsibly. I'll just end with a crazy story that we heard, right? There's a guy who sells paintings, right? And we're in Arizona, he sells in Scottsdale, and he was selling a painting. And the painting was $250, right? And he came home with a check, and he looked at whatever, he sold the painting, and he came home and he looked at the check, and it was for $25,000. And so he called right away. He called the people that wrote him the check, and he said, I'm really sorry, you added 2 zeros here, right? It's 250. And the person on the other end of the phone said, oh, I thought it was 25,000. We're art collectors, we're art dealers. If that's all it's worth, just rip up the check. We're not interested, and we'll return your painting. Right. So at the end of the day, the concept is that if you charge more, you will find clients that value the outcome more, and they will be more motivated to actually do the work. I know for sure the way I show up to a coaching call where I've paid $30,000 for the coach versus the coaching call where the coaching call is free, right, is completely different. And I am motivated based on my financial investment to get the outcome, which again, if you're a coach, you want your clients to be able to get the outcome in order for you to build a lucrative business where people are more than excited to refer you. So those are the 4 pillars. Again, I'll review. You have to have your asset list. You have to know yourself. You have to know your client. You have to figure out where on the continuum you can best serve your client. And then you have to be able to charge your client what it's worth to the client, not to you, not per hour, not any of that other kind of stuff. So those are the 4 pieces. And I think with that, you can literally leave, never talk to us again, and go build a very lucrative business. I'd love if you talk to us again, because I would love to celebrate your wins and to share your success with our audience. That being said, if you would want to have a more custom, actually, let me stop with that and just ask, are there any questions based on what you've heard so far? We have time left. I would love to answer anything, and I'll stop talking. Anything? Anyone have any questions? Cool. Julie, anything? Do you want to share anything? Why don't you wrap up the call? How do you do that? Why don't you do that, Julie?
Okay, so thank you guys for joining us today. We hope that we gave you some food for thought. I hope Jacob did. He always offers great value anytime he comes to any conversation. And that being said, we're definitely available and around if you guys want more resources. We do have some free resources available. We do have a free Facebook group that's called Creating Cash Flow for Coaches. If you guys are interested in more free resources about coaching. And, we, as Jacob mentioned at the top of our hour, we do have a very supportive group course for anybody who's interested in really taking this to the next level and having deep support in doing so. So we'd be happy to kind of give you support at whatever level that you are interested in.
Cool. I'm going to turn off the recording now. Oh, Julie, why don't you turn off the recording now in case anyone wants to ask unrecorded questions, and then we will close out this call, and whichever one.